This is the Chapter 2 summary. The last chapter we looked at forces. We looked at point masses in equilibrium. And so in this chapter, we're going to expand that into what we call rigid objects. And so we have a bunch of stuff dealing with rigid objects. Let's go. So I have my list here. We're going to talk about rigid objects, torque, equilibrium, center mass, and then springy things. And that's just a bonus. It's really cool to think about, though, in a certain kind of way. So let's talk about rigid objects. I'm going to actually start with a kind of a demo here. So you can take this, take a pencil, and put it on the table, just like that. That's my pencil. Now I'm going to, if I push here and I push here with equal and opposite forces, what happens? Well, it's just like before, right? We said in the previous chapter that F net is 0, then it's in equilibrium. So here I would have F1 and F2 are equal and opposite directions, equal forces. So the net force is 0 and it just stays there. That's pretty simple, right? Okay, let's do it again. Same forces, same equal and opposite forces. But now I'm going to push F2 right here and F1 down there. So if you push like this, what's going to happen? Well, this condition is still true. In the x direction, I have F1 minus F2, and it's still 0. But you can do this. You know that's not going to stay at rest. So this is not a point mass. It matters where the forces are applied. In a lot of cases, we're going to use the assumption that the dimensions don't matter, but sometimes dimensions matter. Okay? Sometimes it matters where those forces are applied. And in those cases, we need to deal with the object as a whole. And so we're going to call this a rigid object. Now, just as an example, suppose this was made of Jell-O. Okay, and I push here and I push there. Well, something different's going to happen. The object's going to deform. So by rigid objects, we mean objects that maintain their shape. Also, we're going to look at later the rotation of rigid objects. But for now, we're going to deal with objects that do not rotate at all. Okay, so where am I at next? So we're going to need, in order to deal with these objects, we're going to need a new definition, and that's torque. This is just a chapter summary. Don't worry, we're going to be working problems too. So imagine that you go to a door. So here's a wall, there's a hinge, and a door, and another hinge. And so this door opens like that. Would you push to open the door right at the hinge? No, you're not going to do that because the door's not going to open, right? Instead, the door handle's on the opposite side of the hinge. It's not even good to have it in the middle. Sometimes, in The Hobbit, they have the door handles in the middle because it looks cool, but it's not cool. So that's because you have to apply a torque to open the door. So imagine that I have torque. You can think of torque as a rotational type of force. It's like force except for rotations, even though we're not rotating yet. So suppose I have an object right here, and I apply a force right there on that object. I can calculate the torque, but we need to first pick a point about which we calculate the torque. If you look at a different point, you're going to have a different torque. That'll be important later, and we'll talk about it in just a second. So there's my force F. Now I'm going to draw a vector in a different color from point O to where the force is applied, and we're going to call that R. They're both vectors. Now we can also calculate the angle between R and F. So if you extend R, that's the angle F, theta. With that, I can say torque O is going to be equal to F times R times sine of theta. And that's the magnitude of the force. That's the magnitude of R, which we're going to call the torque arm, and that's the angle theta. So this is our definition of torque, our rotational force. Now, we do need to think about positive and negative. So when we're torque is really a vector, but we're not going to deal with it as a vector because it gets too complicated. So torque's a vector, but it has to have a positive torque and a negative torque. So what we're going to say is that if this force would cause the object to rotate counterclockwise this way, it's positive. So this is going to be counterclockwise. It doesn't have to rotate. If it would all by itself make it rotate. So if I just have that one force, you can see this stick would move this way, and that, a clock, okay, clocks go this way, that's clockwise. So it's opposite of clockwise, we're going to call that positive torque. And then if that torque would make it go in this direction, the clockwise direction, that would be a negative torque. It doesn't really matter which one you call positive and negative. I mean, it kind of does. But if you did it backwards, as long as you were consistent, you would be okay. Now, just as an instance here, I calculate the torque. What if I move my torque point to right there? Point O is right there. Well, in that case, R would be 0 and there'd be no torque. And that's why you don't want to push a door at the hinge, because the torque arm's 0 and you get no torque. Now, there are a couple of other ways to calculate torque about this point. Remove that one right there, torque O. We can write this as F perpendicular R. So F perpendicular says, hey, let's just take the perpendicular component of F. So here's my R vector, and then I can find this right here. And that's F perpendicular. That's the force that's perpendicular to that torque arm. So as long as those two things are perpendicular, I can just say R perpendicular times F. I can also calculate the torque as F R perpendicular. So in this case, I'm going to take this force and extend it. And then I want to take my point O and draw a line so that that's perpendicular. If I find the length of that, I can use R perpendicular times F. All three of those are identical. Okay? You can prove that in a homework. It's really not too hard. But just remember, those are the three ways that we can calculate torque. And it depends on your point that you pick. In this chapter, we're going to deal with objects in equilibrium, which means that any point is fine. You can pick any point. So let's talk about equilibrium. Before, remember that we said that if an object was in equilibrium, then we had the following. We said the net force was 0. And that led us to actually two equations in 2 dimensions. I could say the net force in the x direction is 0, and the net force in the y direction is 0. That was the equilibrium. But now if we want to make sure it doesn't rotate also, we're going to say the torque net about some point O is 0. And again, you can pick your point. So let's just imagine that I have my stick over here. I'm going to push there. I'm going to push there. Now let's do a different one. Let's just push there about this point right here and push right there. So I have two forces. They're both going to exert a torque. And I want to say that it's in equilibrium. There's also forces on this. So it'd actually be this way. And yeah, but it doesn't matter. But the point is, if it does not rotate about that point, it also does not rotate about that point. It also does not rotate about that point. It also does not rotate about this point outside of the object. You can pick any point that you want to calculate the torque as long as you stay using that same point. So we can use that to our advantage in certain problems to calculate the sum of the torques. But now we have a third condition for equilibrium of a rigid object. The net force in the x direction has to be 0, the net force in the y direction has to be 0, and the net torque has to be 0. Moving right along. This is just a summary. Remember, I told you that. Center of mass. So suppose I'm going to take this down here. I should have had this beforehand. Here's a stick. It's actually a ruler. And if I wanted to put this in equilibrium, maybe I want to, hold it by support it with two things like this, 2 fingers. So I have 2 forces exerting an upwards force on the stick. But there's also a gravitational force. Remember, gravitational force looks like this on the surface of the Earth, Fg is mg, and all parts of the stick have mass. So gravity acts on all parts of that stick. However, we can calculate the gravitational force in terms of torque as acting at one single point, and we call that the center mass. Let me show you how we get that. So suppose I have a stick and it's made of 3 points. So here's my stick. I'm going to draw it as here's my stick. And so it has 3 points. They're unequal. Okay. So I have M1, M2, M3. That's a 3. And this is the x-axis. And so this is at x1, x2, x3. So there's no real stick. It's just made of those 3 masses. Let's go ahead and calculate the torque due to the gravitational force due to each one of these masses. So here I have M1g, here I have M2g, and here I have M3g. M3. And let's call this the point O at the origin just to make things easy. So the torque net about point O is going to be equal to this torque. Okay. Is that a positive or negative torque? Well, it would make it rotate this way counterclockwise, so it's going to be negative. So negative, and you'll notice I can use torque equals FR sine theta, but all these have a theta of 90 degrees, so their sine of 90 is 1. So we don't have to worry about that. I get x1 m1g. That's the torque due to this mass right here. The torque due to this mass is going to be also minus x2 m2g. The torque due to this one is going to be minus x3 m3g. And that's the total torque. Now, you can see that we can factor something out. I can factor out the negative g. So let's do that. Negative g times x1 m1 plus x2 m2 plus x3 m3. Now, what I want to do is a trick. I want to multiply the top and the bottom by the total mass. So let's say the total mass m is going to be equal to m1 plus m2 plus m3. So if I do that, I can multiply by m over m, right? That is the fraction 1. It doesn't really matter. I'm not changing anything. But now I'm going to move this in here, and I get negative mg times x1 m1 plus x2 m2 plus x3 m3, all of that divided by the total mass. So this is mass times g. This has units of distance, right? Because we have mass that is in here, and we divide by mass, so we only have a distance there. We actually call this the x center of mass. So I can write, I'm running out of room. Poor planning on my part here. So I can say the x center of mass is going to be equal to m1 x1 m2 x2 m3 x3 divided by the total mass. And that's the location. If I treat that as my center of mass, I can write this as negative m x center of mass g. So now I can treat that object as having one gravitational force, torque, at the center of mass. And I can find that center of mass with this equation right there. What if you have 4 masses? What if you have 5 masses? What if you have 8,000 masses? That doesn't matter. We can write this as x center of mass is the sum over I, mi, xi, over the total mass. So you just take each mass, you multiply it by its distance to the whatever point you want, the origin, it doesn't really matter, your reference point. You sum up all those m's times x's, and then you divide by the total mass, center of mass. If you have a uniform object and you did that, you would find the center of mass to be in the center. But it doesn't have to be, but that's what you would find. We can do the same thing in the y direction. We'd have a y center of mass. Y center of mass is the sum over I of mi, that's an m, mi, yi over the total mass. So you can find the location of those masses, center masses. And then you can treat that object as having only one gravitational force at that one location, x center mass, y center mass. and then you can calculate the torque. Now, this is actually also the center of gravity. Technically, that's what we just found. So the center of gravity is technically what we did. We called it the center of mass because if the gravitational field is constant, if you have a constant g, which near the surface of the Earth we do, then the center of gravity and the center of mass are in the same location. And people just say center of mass more often. It's technically what we did, center of gravity. Okay. So when we have an object and we want to calculate the torque due to gravity, center of mass. A lot of times you don't have to calculate it. You can just say it's in the center if it's a uniform object. Okay, one last thing. And this is just kind of a nice little bonus here. You know, if I have a rigid object, let's make it a box. And it's leaning up like that on the floor. There's a force up here. There's a force over there. And there's a force right there. I don't know. There's a force right here. And there's gravity. I can calculate the net force. I can calculate the net torque. I can say it's in equilibrium. We actually can model a rigid object as being not rigid. And this is a very useful thing for more advanced things if you want to do that. So I can actually take this object and say, okay, suppose I have this. I have these masses. They're individual point masses, and I can calculate the forces on individual point masses. They all have a gravitational force. And then I connect them by springs. Now I'm going to need to do this all the way. And if those are stiff springs, then what I can do is to determine if I pull it a little bit, if I pull this one, it's going to pull on that mass because this spring's going to stretch and that spring's going to pull this. So I can model this as individual masses. I can calculate the force on each individual mass, and I can model the situation the same way. So I can approximate this rigid object with a rigidity object. Okay? It actually turned out to be a very useful thing. And also very true, because what is a block? A block is nothing except a bunch of atoms that are kind of locked in place, but not completely, and they're connected by this electrostatic interaction between the atoms, because atoms have charges. And it turns out to be a lot like springs. So this is not a crazy model. Now, we're not going to really do a lot of calculations with that, but I just want you to kind of think about how you can make this connection between those two things. That is Chapter 2 of Rigid Objects.